Marvel Rivals developers NetEase, despite the massive success, the hugely successful launch of Marvel Rivals, has laid off apparently the majority of its team, if reporting here is to be understood.
Well, in the U.S. specifically.
In the U.S. division, it should be noted that NetEase is a primarily Chinese company, and they have multiple arms and studios working under that banner, so it is primarily the U.S. team here. Thaddeus Sasser, who was the game director for Marvel Games, took to LinkedIn to post, "This is such a weird industry. My stellar, talented team just helped deliver an incredibly successful new franchise in Marvel Rivals for NetEase Games, and we're just laid off. Oh well, times are tough all over. Let's find these incredible people new jobs."
It's an incredibly fucked up industry where success isn't good enough.
Where you can be like the top seller on Steam, secure, quote, 40 million players, over 40 million players, and still just immediately lay off all the people responsible for that.
Like, it's the problem with, folks, we're going to talk about capitalism again. It's the problem of, like, the desire for endless growth in profits, like unsustainably endless growth in profits, that you can have a runaway success, and that is a failure.
So there is some more context to this. Nothing that I think adequately explains or defends or excuses the layoffs here, just the way this is structured. Bloomberg did some reporting on this, and in their reporting they cover some of the motivations behind William Ding, who is holds a executive role, chief executive officer role at NetEase, in his thinking and his perspective, his defense of these actions. After years of expanding overseas, video game billionaire William Ding is hitting the brakes at NetEase Inc., the pioneering Chinese company behind hits like Eggy Party and its newest blockbuster, Marvel Rivals. Ding, 53, who founded the company and is chief executive officer, has cut hundreds of jobs, closed or idled game studios, and pulled back on international investment as he refocuses on a smaller portfolio of titles. He reasserted his leadership with a series of dramatic decisions over the past year, according to people familiar with the company's inner workings who asked not to be identified. If successful, the reorganization could strengthen NetEase's position against much larger rival Tencent holdings and upstarts like MiHoYo Co. If not, Ding risks undermining his own legacy. The company's gaming business, one of the world's largest, had $11.6 billion in revenue last year, but before it was released, there were discussions about it being canceled. This is to say, Marvel Rivals was already getting planned to be canceled before it had released. According to sources, Ding objected to paying Walt Disney Co. for the use of their popular characters like Wolverine and Spider-Man, and at one point asked his artists to swap in their own hero designs. That ultimately aborted effort cost the company millions of dollars, and it was emblematic of the abrupt changes ushered in by the CEO. A NetEase spokesperson denied this account, saying the company has enjoyed a close partnership with Marvel since 2017.
A NetEase spokesman denied this account. Okay, sure. I choose not to believe that. Anyway.
No, of course not, yeah.
It's the most, like, clueless idea that I can only attribute to a CEO. To be like, it'll cost us so much money to have this, the Marvel license, when we could make so much more money if we had just our original IPs in here. Can you imagine if Coachella announced their new lineup for the next year and it was all cover bands? No one would pay. They're like, we save so much money by getting these like local bands that do covers of Green Day songs. They're called Blue Night. You want to see Blue Night? No one's going to pay for that.
Yeah, it's a stupid assertion on their part. I mean, part of the reason why Marvel Rivals is so successful, why it has 40 million players, is absolutely because of the license, is absolutely because of the characters, because of the strength of the IP, because Marvel is fucking what it is, right? For them to swap in original characters, yeah, they could put out a game that would have been of comparable quality, for whatever that's worth, but it would not have received nearly the amount of attention. It is so hard to market original IP right now, especially in competition with the likes of Overwatch 2, which, you know, is obviously the luster is off, the shine is off of that game and of that franchise, off of that whole studio, off of Activision Blizzard. It's not doing what it used to do. It's not doing the numbers it used to do, but that was really the last of the original IPs in this multiplayer game capacity, in this, continual, not live service necessarily, but in continuously updated, long-term supported multiplayer shooters of this genre.
Yeah, that's surviving. Because, like we noted, Concord developers had original characters, and they also had massive layoffs. And, there are other problems with that game, as far as I've heard, but it's a hero shooter. The characters are really important. That's why Overwatch 2 is still hanging on, is because I think a lot of people still have attachment to the characters.
Whether it be from, reading all the auxiliary media that comes out around Overwatch, all their comics and their other, spin-offs, or whether it's from the Source filmmaker community, who is
pioneering.
So, yeah, it's on the one hand, everything I just said. On the other hand, I understand the want of any company, to have their own original property that takes off rather than being forever tied to a license. But at the same time, to get success to this extent, and this is massively successful, I don't think it would have been possible, even with NetEase having, long-term standing in the industry, long enough that they have some amount of cash, that they're recognized by name. I just can't see them launching an original IP, launching a version of this game with their original heroes in, that would have come even close to this. And I would have to assume that ultimately, the way the percentages break down, that they should rather be making whatever money they're making off of their percentage with 40 million players transacting. It is a free-to-play game, but that skin market is obviously very lucrative, versus, let's say, just for the sake of example, if they had 400,000 players, right, and they owned everything and they took 100% of that profit in, that would still pale in comparison, I assume, by the order of tens of millions. Clearly, I'm not a bean counter. Clearly, they did some sort of projection, and ultimately they landed on sticking with the Marvel's with the Marvel license. Right, at some point they determined that was the right course to go. We can talk about that aspect of it. We should really hone in on, though, the aspect of a game being so successful and still needing to lay off, not needing in quotation marks, needing to lay off such a large majority of the team, needing to cut costs and shrink in the wake of such a successful product. I think it's abhorrent. I think it's bad practice. I think, they'd be better off diverting those people, finding new projects for them to work on. But that's not how these companies choose to operate at this point. For people who are confused as to why a studio would see a success and the first thing they would think of is layoffs, that's just unfortunately typical, especially for these long-term games, these live service games, these ones that need to be supported post-launch over years, lengths of time, because the hard part is launching the game. That's the hardest part. That's the part that takes the most human resources, the most people working on it. And then once you've reached that point where the game is out, these companies see fit to trim, because now it's just a matter of putting out skins or maybe the occasional new game mode or seasonal piece of content, and that does, for what it's worth, take far less people to maintain. I think it's bad. I think it's a bad model. I think it doesn't lead to any sort of confidence in people getting jobs in this industry. Between this and all the other layoffs, this is the worst time in history to try and pursue a career in mainstream game development, to try and get signed to a studio, to a company, to a large developer, because this becomes so common at this point. This has become the pattern of these games launching and then deciding they don't need these people on retainer anymore. And so I can't imagine signing up for a project knowing that's where it's inevitably going to land. That, once you've done your work, you're more likely than not going to get excised and cut from the company. That just seems so fucking demoralizing. And even if I understand from a business perspective or from a direction, production perspective, why they choose to do this, what their justification is, I still think it's immoral, and I still think it is long-term damaging for careers, for the prospect of people continuing to work in this industry.
And I think a lot of that is kind of why we're seeing more and more companies really want to embrace AI, because, you know, AI don't need to eat. AI don't need to get a paid wage. You know, the less humans you can involve in the process, you know, the better for the company. At least that's the way they see it.
That's the way they see it, but it's obviously not the way that things will work.
Right.
You can't replace these jobs with AI, no matter how much they pretend like they can. I think companies quickly realize that, like, actually trying to replace people in those roles is not a winning prospect, is not actually feasible.
We don't have this in the notes for today, but I know Microsoft was saying something about, like, a new, like, AI thing they want to do to help generate ideas for games, which is just, again, like, just when I used to work at retail, I had people, like, complain to me about, like, how there's, like, so few people in the store to, like, do the work. Like, why don't you just bring more people in? And, like, I honestly, I would tell people, like, if they could run this store off of, like, one dog running in a giant hamster wheel to power the lights on, and that was all it took, they would do that. Like, the incentive is to make the most profit by spending the least amount of money on, like, you know, upkeep and salary and stuff as possible. If they could get rid of as many people as possible, that is what they do. And that is, like, unfortunately how it is, and that fucking sucks, and that needs to change.
And even with regards to the license, like, it speaks to this sort of feeling of, like, oh, well, we could have done with our own license, we would have made more money. Like, the main problem is we're going to be giving money to Marvel and stuff. But, like, that Avengers game tanked. It took real talent for this team to actually still make a good game out of it. This wasn't a guaranteed success or something where you just be like, yeah, we could just throw anyone at this because it's not our character, so who cares? Like, no, that's not how it works. Like, people will probably show up for a second, but they're not going to stick around just because of the license. It's because of the work that these people put in.
It's because of the core of the game. It's the core. It is the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that were put into honing in on, like, a good game feel and making a product that, like, compels you to continue playing beyond just the fan service and the looking at the characters, the recognizing, the pointing at the screen and being like, that's Squirrel Girl over there. There has to be a game underneath it. And you know, my heart goes out to the people who spent so much time, who invested so much of themselves into realizing that vision for the game, into putting together what, you know, is, from what I hear, a pretty quality product, and then just getting shown the door for all those efforts.
By the way, I do want to bring up a little bit more on NetEase in general here, because we've been focusing on Marvel Rivals and that team, and we did mention that other jobs were cut and closed and stuff. I have a little bit more information here from that Bloomberg article. This was relayed by Genki_JPN on Twitter. And they say from the article, Bloomberg reports that NetEase will not give its Japanese creators additional funding or time after they finish their current projects. Yakuza creator Toshihiro Nagoshi's Nagoshi Studio and Suda51's Grasshopper manufacturer are both owned by NetEase. And then quoting the article, NetEase-funded Japanese creators, Nagoshi among them, have been given time to wrap up ongoing projects. The message from headquarters in Hangzhou has been that there will be no additional funding or time, the people said. There's no plan to spend on marketing or promoting the games currently in production in Japan.
Yeah, this just seems like, again, trimming, trying to narrow their focus as much as possible as a company. And, you know, I would hope it comes back to bite them. I would hope this move does not result in profits, but they will probably find a way to spin it to stockholders where it does. And that's just the unfortunate reality of it, that this move, despite the devastating effect it has on the industry and on these companies, that, you know, you hope that people working there on, like, the ground level are just interested, are devoted, their dream is to make games that people play and enjoy. that, you know, they're ultimately the ones who get fucked on this, and then after that it's the consumers who get fucked by these completely dispassionate companies stripping out as much of the human element as possible and depriving these teams of resources and ultimately resulting in worse products at the end of the day.
And speaking of spinning...
Yeah, let's move on from that story into our next one. I think we've said as much needs to be said. You know, fuck capitalism. You know, just put a nice TLDR on that whole story.
GameStop sells their Canadian and French operations, blaming DEI.
This is so fucking stupid. Let's read. This is reporting by The Star. Brick-and-mortar video game retailer and popular meme stock GameStop announced Tuesday that it plans to sell its operations in France and Canada after a, quote, evaluation of its international assets. The latest move follows years of declining revenues for the company. The retailer has reportedly shuttered more than 700 of its stores around the world since 2020. I've seen these close to home. I should just mention personally, anecdotally, there's not many GameStops around where I am at the moment. The company announced the move in a brief news release on its website. While the statement did not provide any further explanation of the decision, its CEO appears to have taken issue with the, quote, wokeness of the two countries. Posted to X, CEO Ryan Cohen, quote, email m&a@gamestop.com if you're interested in buying GameStop Canada or Micromania France. High taxes, liberalism, socialism, progressivism, wokeness, and DEI included at no additional cost if you buy today. End fucking quote. Just for further context, the company had a total of 203 stores in Canada and 332 in France as of February 2024, according to an SEC filing. GameStop has already exited its operations in Ireland, Switzerland, and Austria during the 2023 fiscal year and sold its Italian subsidiary in November of 2024. It reportedly planned to wind down its German operations by January 31st, 2025.
When I saw this one, and I specifically saw him like complaining like, oh yeah, DEI over here in GameStop in France and Canada, and like my initial thought was, motherfucker, it's your company. If you don't want diversity in your company, that's you. You choose your policies. But no, that's not what that is.
He's trying to pin it on the countries themselves for the working conditions, the conditions of operating a business within those countries, that these are somehow the contributing factors to the decline of GameStop.
But, I mean, first of all, I guess before I go into that, is GameStop's been on the decline. Like, brick and mortar has been on the decline. GameStop itself has been on the decline. That liberalism is not what's killing GameStop. GameStop's business is killing GameStop.
Yeah, no, there's too many factors to count here as to why GameStop has been in a fucking state of free fall for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah. But, like, I could point at any given thing and say, like, that's stupid. Like saying wokeness and DEI is killing GameStop. Like, I could point at that and go like, no, because, and like, that's not the point. Because the point is like, saying woke and saying DEI are all just fucking dog whistles.
Yeah, obviously this is just pandering. Obviously this is just a fucking CEO, this Ryan Cohen, trying to distract from the reality of him failing to run a fucking business, of his company not having like a real purpose or a point in the year 2025. Like, this company shutting down, GameStop is going down the drain because the model doesn't make any fucking sense. And that's obvious, and that's known. That's like not like a shocking revelation. People have hated GameStop for years. It's been a joke to make fun of like how miserable it is to shop at GameStop, between their pushing pre-orders on you and you know, their rewards program and members program and all these things they do to upsell you. Then the fucking meme stock thing happened where people invested in GME and some people got rich and most people got fucking the rug pulled out from under them on that. But it gave them a second lease on life that they have since fumbled, and that was always going to be the inevitability of it. Was that whole thing that happened wasn't going to save the company. It was just a way for people to make a quick and tidy profit off of fools. And now, as the company is clearly winding down, they've closed their operations in so many countries. There's not going to be many stores left by the end of the year, and we'll probably see the complete dissolution of this company within the decade. and they're just trying to, in their capacity as CEO, in their capacity as a talking head, as the face of the company, are just trying to pander to whoever they can, whoever might be stupid enough to buy what they're selling, to reinvest their interest and their care, their whatever passion or loyalty they have to this company. This is like a last ditch effort to try and spur some sort of business from these people who historically don't really spend their money at GameStop in the first place. So pointless. And then we all get mad when he pulls the cord on his golden parachute and lands somewhere else, and the cycle repeats itself. Fuck.
The important thing is to kind of recognize that when people say this stuff, like saying like, "Oh, liberalism and wokeness are the cause of this," it's like, that is not a thing worth arguing against. Because the point is, I'm going to use the F word. A thing that fascists do is that they will present ridiculous arguments that beg to be argued against.
Just to waste time and distract.
Just to waste time and distract. Because the fascist uses words as a weapon. They do not believe in the words they say. They know that you believe in words, and they're going to get you distracted by having to argue for this, that, and the other thing, while they've already moved on to the next thing. That is like a game that they're playing that you do not have to engage with.
Well, in better news, Limited Run Games is selling defective cartridges, and Retrobit is stealing fan translations. Wait.
Finally, some good news.
Yeah.